Hello, everyone. Madeline Dell here with the Chapter Goddess, and I have two amazing authors with me this evening. Both are in a different country, so our time zones have been crazy figuring it out. But I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we're going to talk about their latest anthology, right?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Latest anthology, and talk about their stories, which both were amazing. You guys need to check it out. All right, guys. Who wants to go first?
I think the organizer should. Amanda?
Oh, well, that's me. Hello, I'm A. Warne. I am a speculative writer from Western Sydney in Australia. And I published the When Sleeping Giants Wake anthology, the one we're talking about today. My story is called Legacy. It's about two teenage girls who don't know they're witches and accidentally wake up a sleeping giant, and they have to put him back to sleep before he ruins the town. So that's me.
G'day, I'm JT Moriarty. I wrote a story titled The Least of Our Concern. And it's set in the future. Everyone, every planet everywhere sort of has this horrible, mysterious virus that got everywhere. But there's hope. There's strange signs coming from the moon hanging around old Earth, because we're not on old Earth anymore. And when they investigate it, they find giant bones, which they think are dinosaur bones, but then they turn out to be giant bones, almost like these giants might awaken. Mysterious and intriguing.
I like it. And both stories were awesome. I like because they were both they both were pretty different from each other. I felt like Jay's was more of a science fiction and yours was more of a fantasy. And I liked that difference. I haven't read any more of the anthology, guys, for you guys that are watching, but these two stories are amazing, and I'm going to check out the rest of them. But okay, so Amanda, where did you get the inspiration to have the twins as your main characters?
So I'm actually writing a story for My Thrill at the moment. It's a new app that's about to come out, and I was just really stuck in some teenage minds, and I love the idea of writing about teenagers and going into young adult fantasy, because kids are so gutsy and they just want to jump out. They want to test the world. If there's consequences, they're like, yeah, we'll sort it out when we face it. Like, they don't pre-plan. But I thought, well, if you've got all those guts and to run out and do all these amazing things, what happens if you had things taken away from you, like your knowledge of being powerful? And so everyone's in on this big secret, like their parents and their auntie, and this whole community has been keeping this little secret around these twin girls. And so when they get hold of their aunt's Ouija board and accidentally awaken these giants,
Whoops. They're
like, well, how do we do that? And why do we have to put it back to sleep? And everyone's like, oh, like, so it's like this secret that, you know, it was taken away from them. So I was kind of like, I'm writing about boys, so I wanted to write about girls. And I wanted to stretch this, you know, the boys in the story that I'm working on now, you know, they're the ones that hold the secret. So I was kind of trying to do the opposite. And that's what I tend to do is instead of looking at other fiction or other pieces of work to get their inspiration, I like to deep dive into a topic and then write 3 or 4 different stories and really find these different avenues. So I might have 6 answers to one topic, but then that will be like 12 different stories. So yeah, my writing process is not it's not something you would write down as a process. I just kind of
it's not streamlined.
Yeah, I'd be terrible in a school setting. It's like A equals B, and I'll be like, no, it doesn't. It equals the whole alphabet.
Yeah. So Jay, where did the inspiration behind Bronwyn and Benjamin come from? I felt like Benjamin really reminded me of your character, like of you, like in general.
Me? Well, originally, I wanted the main couple to just be a couple that you could like and enjoy, but I wanted the male to be withdrawn, drinks cups of tea. You know, he's a homebody, but he'll save the universe if he has the chance to. Bronwyn was very driven at the start, and I just like driven female characters. It's not really a response to, you know, the 1950s and 60s when being a female was the only characteristic a character would have. More just I wanted someone to drive it, but together they balance each other out. So if he's like, I don't mind doing this, but she says we're doing it, he's perfectly happy to go along with it. She's never dragging him and he's never dragging her back. But he is a white guy who likes cups of tea and coffee and comfort, so it might be a good match for me. I don't know.
I kind of felt like he had a little bit of humor going on in some situations too. So, and
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
it was kind of like definitely your traits kind of coming through. I thought that was interesting. So, my notes up here.
They went through a few changes because the first draft I wrote, I was having a kid as well. So last year, at one point, I genuinely threw all my writing aside because I just had to. Came back to it and I'd left it in a state completely opposite to what I thought. I thought I'd reread it, shortened it all, and made it fresh. Came back and I just saw a massacre of words and ideas. I'm like, what have I done?
We've all been there.
But
Yes.
yeah, but no, it was picked up, fixed up, and the end result is I'm very happy with it. And to, also thank you to everyone who helped.
Yes. And it's amazing how big life events can like change everything in like your view of your work and stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
It affects your sleep too. I mean, having a kid. So.
Oh, yeah. I'm on my 5th cup of coffee today, and I've got one ready to, as we're talking.
Gotta love that coffee, guys. Gosh, I can't function without it at all.
You just keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, say anything because I am drinking a glass of wine, guys. It's late here.
I'm gonna pretend to be the good one. I got water.
I've got water
okay,
somewhere.
Yeah, right.
So with the anthology, like working together with all these authors, what is some of your takeaways from working with everyone?
I'll let you go first, Jay.
Cool. I wrote and I also edited the stories, both this year and last year. I wasn't in the very first one, but that one was really good. Just coming across everyone's different point of view from what I thought was a very simple opening, like the magic and fire, that screamed goblins instantly to me because I love magic, I love fire. Goblins working with fire seemed like a natural, but I thought, what if they meet something that's better at fire than they are? So they need to come up with a clever solution. That was mine. And then everybody else's was so different. I thought it would be maybe a few stories about fantasy monsters and fire, and it wasn't. With the sleeping giants, that's much more open to interpretation because it can be a giant of, the old classic fee fi fo fom smash you on the head with a club giant. It can be a giant of a concept. It can be a giant terms of like a planet versus other planets, like Jupiter's big, Pluto's tiny, and not a planet anymore. So just the breadth of actual topics and ranges you get in the anthology is a really exciting way to actually explore what seems like a simple idea, and with no hints more than the title. Like all we got was the magic and fire and when sleeping giants wake. And I actually convinced my brother to write in When Sleeping Giants Wake, and he did, which was really exciting for me. Like, yes, I can read something you've written for once. Yeah.
Awesome. I wondered if you were related to the other author that was mentioned with the same last name. I looked at that. I was like, did he write under a different pen name?
No, I just wrote 2 stories. Yeah. It's my brother. Then there'll be an anthology with nothing but Warnes and Moriartys. That'll look suspicious.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm the publisher of the anthologies, and this is our third year that we've been together. Originally, we started off in small groups, so close groups that I'm part of, and hence in the first one I do a big call out to the rogues. So we're called the 200 Rogues, and so on Facebook there's all these secret fantasy groups, and when I kind of was popping out the ideas of pulling community together, because I'm a big community builder. People were like, yep, we want to jump in on this. And then the first one was really great. Then the second one worked as well, and the third one. And now I've done a call out for 3 more coming for this year. Yeah, so I was like, okay, let's push the boundaries a little bit more. So, and I've opened it up so it's not just for the private fantasy groups. So, having these anthologies, I've been in other groups with other anthologies and they worked out wonderful, but sometimes you get the open call where you can write about anything, and then you get this big mix mash like fantasy and romance and this and that. And it's like, okay, when you're a reader, there's just nothing hooking the stories together. So when I
Yeah,
was
that's just random
writing,
collections.
Yeah.
it is a random collection. And even I find like with the huge authors, Neil Gaiman and Stephen King, when they've participated in anthologies, you know, the stories are great individually, but there was no hook. And so I was like, okay, I want to create a theme and then put a collection under that theme. But coming up with the themes, like every time I hear an idea, I'm like, I'll write it down. I have a diary of like 400 ideas now. So
Are we gonna have 400 anthologies?
I mean,
yeah, pretty much.
it's a
Whenever I
possibility,
can
right?
whenever I can get the cover and I've found an artist and I go, okay, this pairs it, then I pitch it to the group and say, look, guys, these are the themes. Which one do you want to write? And that's how the next one is called Deals in Blood. So it's
Demons.
yeah, it's
Sorry,
it's a community, and that's why I wanted to approach publishing very differently. You know, like, you know, we've got the beta readers. I structurally edit all of the stories, and then we're working with 2 different authors, so Adriana and Amy, and they'll alternate because we're increasing in our anthologies. So yeah, so when you become part of the fantasy group, it's not you just submit and run. You submit, you're part of the group. You know, you can make some future decisions, you can help out with the marketing, and it's more than, you know, just pumping out more stories. It's, you know, it's a community and you're investing in it, just like as if it was your own book and your own publishing and your own indie experience. You know, you get to do as much as I do. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Jay, did you have something to add on that?
Yeah, no, I'm just putting my hand up because I knew that I've written many anthologies with Amanda, and I'd been interviewed once or twice about my robot stories with you, and I'm like, well, yeah, this is a whole part of it. If you can interview us, this is great for all 3. And I feel like I'm booking finally, like proper booking. People say, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a stay-at-home writer, Dad. Like, that's lovely.
It helps. You're like, here's my interview, like show it, and it does. It makes you feel more official. Like even as an author of like myself, outside of interviewing authors, when I get interviewed, I'm like, yes.
It just feels good.
It does. And it's kind of empowering. It makes you want to write more and do more and be like more involved. Although I've caught myself, I'm like, okay, wait, slow down. So.
See, and then outside of the anthologies, my stories are huge. Like, you know, my young adult book, The Reluctant Wizard's 115,000 words. It's middle grade to young adult, and that's absolutely epic. And so I can't punch out as many books as I would like in a year. So the anthologies are just like this sweetener to kind of like keep the readers there and say, yes, I've got more stories that are coming out. I'm writing all the time, but the big books have to wait. Yeah, they need
it's a rationing system.
Processing, and the production with the editor is intense because, you know, like, anthology, here's 5,000 words. Here's my big book, it's 115,000 words with, you know, 25 different arcs. You're gonna it takes a longer time.
It does, yeah.
So it's nice for the readers that they can have that bite size take to in between releases.
So where did you guys get your idea for the giant? Because you've got Jay, well, I can't say where it's at. I'm not going to do that because that's totally a spoiler. Okay, so you've got both got 2 very different ideas. Where did you get the inspiration for that?
Me first?
Yeah.
I heard the title, and I think I was still working at the news agency at this point, so last year. And I loved the idea of, you know, the Cthulhu mythos, that giant squiddy guy who's like floating through space, whatever. I wondered what would happen. Yeah, H.P. Lovecraft. I wonder what would happen if, you know, a group of people had a disease or an issue or being attacked, and they needed some superpower that would come and, you know, basically save the day for them, a bit Deus Ex Machina. And I thought, what if it was Cthulhu or a race like Cthulhu? So giant, ancient, you know, giant from the past, you know, eldritch giants. And if you found them, they would have the answer because they had all the answers. They were the most powerful things in the world right now. And so that's not really a spoiler. It's more of a hint as to what happens with dear Benjamin and Bronwyn. And then just, you know, you find it excellent. Everything's going to be great, isn't it?
Not
And that became
yeah.
the story I wrote.
I like the little kind of like cliffhanger thing you've got at the end of that, and I hope you kind of continue that story because that would be really awesome.
I'll write the whole novel just for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I'll take it.
After all the robots and the fantasy.
Yes, it's on the list, the back list. So
Yep.
So Amanda, your idea for the giant, where did that come from?
So this isn't really an easy question because generally when I sit, I like I could be watching TV and it could be anything, like very, action packed, and all of a sudden in the back of my mind I'm thinking of a mountain. Like my imagination just takes me. Generally, boredom really helps. So when I'm
Yes,
cleaning
absolutely.
the house, yeah, when I'm cleaning the house, and I have 3 children, so there's always a lot of cleaning or cooking. I just kind of let my head just go wherever it was. But I was fixated on this giant mountain, but it was a mountain on the side of the town, and it was like there was a secret beneath the mountain, but then the girls had their own secrets surrounding them. So it was kind of like I was playing on secrets, I was playing on mountain, I was playing on these girls who just got hold of it, and it was kind of like this little domino effect of, okay, how do I get them there, and what happens, and what do they have to do, and just putting all the pieces together. So it was kind of like a story that I would sit down and piece out each character. It was like, there's something wrong with this mountain, and I couldn't figure out what was happening at the mountain. Is the mountain the giant, and then worked my way around backwards. So yeah, I generally will try not to take inspiration from videos and movies or literature that I'm reading. I'm always reading something, but if I do, it's always like the opposite of what I was supposed to be taking out of it, an action film, and then I'm sitting there going, oh, what's this about this mountain? It doesn't marry up. It's just the way my imagination works. It's just totally off the wall.
I feel like that's normal for creatives.
Yeah.
I'll be watching a movie and thinking, the action scene starts up and they're on the back of a train, and I'm like, that's great. What if they swapped the train lines halfway through and then went off and stole the mountain, whatever, blah blah blah. And then about 5 or 10 minutes later, I come out of my daydream. I'm watching what does happen, and I'm like, they didn't go and do the mountain thing, and forget that I dreamt that up. I wasn't watching actively.
Yeah, that's right. Or when I'm trying to explain a story that, like, oh, you should read this book, it's about this, this, and this. And they would come back and they go, that's nothing how I read from it. And then I'm like, wait, and I reread it and I go, I've made up a totally different story than I've read.
Of course, it wasn't a werewolf. Yeah.
It's fun to do that though. Like, I mean, it just happens. So, and that's why we're authors. We get to play with the stories and make them our own.
Yeah.
It's as much fun to write as it is to read, because you're not sure what your characters will do. You're the plucky one. Oh, good. You've murdered the other main character. Where do we go from here?
Yep. Yeah. And that's why I read so much nonfiction. I read like ancient history and all sorts of weird and wacky things, archaeology. And then I go, wow, this is like a little gem. And then I get to steal that because it's coming from nonfiction and not fiction. So yeah, and it's kind of like weave it in.
That's really cool.
Yeah, because nonfiction can also be quite boring, and it makes your mind. So you get the little pieces, and then you read through. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what advice would you guys have to an author who's fixing to participate in an anthology? Like, they're actually going to write a piece and submit it. Do you have any suggestions or tips that you would offer them?
I would say, be prepared to share your work with people, but you have to trust them. You can't hold it like it's the most precious baby made out of crystal in the world that you can't show anyone. You'll never get feedback, you'll never learn, and your personality will get hurt when people say this didn't work or that didn't work or this character's sharp or this storyline makes no sense. That doesn't matter. It all helps your story get better, because if you put it out as it is the very first time you write it, that's a rough draft, and that's not what people want to read. Anyone can write a rough draft any second and reread it, and that's the quality you've got. When you've had 4 or 5 eyes take a look at it and rework it and make suggestions, and you have to learn to shut your mouth and open both your ears. But you learn so much, and definitely you learn about the reasons why. And the more you do that, the more you learn not to do it again in the first place. And so you're learning more and better lessons as you go on. But absolutely write it, submit it, and be prepared for feedback. That's it. And take it on board. Don't say, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Unless you're like Tolkien and he's a bit dead.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
He got better.
Yeah. Yeah, look, yeah, I completely agree with that advice. You know, that some people will come back and say, look, you know, this is how I'm viewing the author, the character or the plot or something like that, and you don't have to agree with it, but you have to consider it, because if you're trying to portray a particular character in a particular way, so maybe they're funny, but then the reader's coming up and they're just narcissistic and whatever, you go, okay, I haven't got the right tools to pull this character off, and then you have to consider, well, what's going wrong for this one. So and you know what, even the biggest writers like George Martin, he still has editors. Stephen King still has editors. So for these particular anthologies, we do the beta reader stages, and I do my structural edit with the beta readers. So it's not, so you don't get like 6 different documents back. It's all in
Oh,
one.
no.
Yeah,
one
and then
workable document
everybody's
works.
comments are in the one. So it might look like, you know, a million comments to go through, and it's quite overwhelming. But as each comment you go through and you consider it and you start to clean up the work, it takes your writing from here to here, and that's what we want. And then once you've revised it and you've gone through it, then the line and copy editor goes through it. So and the reason why we do that is, you know, it's all about quality over quantity. And if you go to Kindle Unlimited and Amazon, there's plenty of quantity. You know, this is about making the best possible book that we can.
I like that, because I am very much quality over quantity. I've had a author friend who has the opposite view that was kind of helping me along my journey earlier on. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, and there's a burnout to that as well, and it takes away your creative juices.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I see authors all the time pumping out 2 books a month, one every 3 weeks, and they just smash.
That's insane.
And, yeah, and you know, there is a market for it, and there are people who can do that, and they're quite happy with that as the readership calls for it. However, you know, whatever you set up has to be for you and your unique market. So what I did was I just thought, okay, yes, we can pump out as many as we want, but like I'm just not gonna, it's taking away my creative just thinking power. I like to just sit on a story, and I always put really twisty twists, if that's a great way of explaining
Twisty
it,
twists?
my end. Yeah, twisty twists, like, but they're like psychologically and emotionally twisted into a twist. Like, it's, you know, I consider the reader, the plot, and the character, they all have their own twist, and then I put it together to make it a twisty twist. So so I have to really
twist. We're up to
think
3
about
twists.
that. Yeah, pretty much, like into a tornado. And I have to really think about pulling that off. I can't do one of those every 2 to 3 weeks. It takes me months, and that's why I need that time to get through the work.
Yeah, I always find I need time between finishing the rough draft and actually redressing any story I've written. So it might be 2 weeks, it might be a month, but I need time to turn off the writer brain and bring in the reader brain. And then as a reader, like, cool, this made no sense. That was no good. You know, if I sit down too quick, then I immediately begin editing, and I'm like, no, let's read what you've got and work from there.
Yeah, and
As
taking
opposed
time.
to
Yes.
Time between drafting and rewriting, and then time between rewriting and then editing. Like, it's totally 3 different processes, but every time you come back and you forgot what you've written about, and then you come with fresh eyes, you just expand one section, cut another. Sometimes I put little comments in my writing, because I'll have the habit of just getting really frustrated and send it off to the editor. And so what I do is I put in there, and it's like really rude swearing comments, like, you idiot.
what were you bleeping?
Yeah. So, and then the worst part is, as I'm writing this draft, I'm going, oh, this is so stupid, make sure I rewrite this whole section. And that's half the time my best writing. It's just mentally I'm not there.
That
And then I'm thinking,
that's
what?
one of
And
the
I come back
funnest-
later and I go, wow, this is really good. What am I thinking? Like, why am I so hard on myself? And then other times I'm thinking, this is the best ever. And I come back and go, what the hell was I thinking?
Yeah.
In that
I'm surprised
time.
by that as well. Like in the first robot book I wrote, there's that scene in the middle with Melinda. If you know the scene, you know the
Yes.
scene. I was the most worried about it. I read it to my mate, and he was like, "Yes, it's a very interesting scene." And I'm like, "This will make or break the book," but everybody seems to have liked it the most. So I was like, "I'm not sure about this chapter. It was the best one." Later on, a chapter I really liked. It seems like I was the only one who liked it, and everybody else was like, "Oh, did that happen?" Okay.
Yeah. People get caught up. Like when my first book that I wrote with my co-author Michelle Crow, so everyone kept pulling out this one passage, and it was her wiping down the table because she spilt coffee, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's so poetically written." I'm just like, she's literally spilled a coffee and wiped it up. And it's like in
the way she
every
wipes it.
review, like, this is so poetic. I'm like, what? I was like, but what about the plot? Like, I'm really stuck on the plot. The plot's awesome. No, they just caught on this, like, look how she wiped it down.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like,
I could
what?
see her
Okay.
wiping away her emotions. Oh,
Yeah, nothing to do with anything, but yeah, it's just a moment in the book, and it's just like every review, like, chunk of it. Look at this.
I mean, if it's what they like, though, it's sometimes the craziest like sections get put on stuff, and you're like, because like this is from, I don't know if you guys can see it. Let me turn it that way. The Fire Breathing Bitch Queen. It's from one of my favorite book series, and it was like one of the other characters talking about the main, like, well, she's basically the main character, calling her that, and it's kind of stuck. And I'm like, yeah, that's totally, I gotta have it. So
you should have been in the Magic and Fire anthology with that.
ooh,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, we'll release it like a redux edition with one more writer in it.
Yeah, we forgot an author. She's a bit late.
Yeah, maybe a future one. Maybe a future one.
Yeah.
All right, guys, go ahead and tell our viewers where they can find you and the book.
Amanda?
Oh, okay. So you can find me.
I'm too polite.
You can find me at aawarne.com. I'm on all social media platforms, Facebook. I was going to say fantasy. How funny. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. So it's all through my website. And then to participate in the future anthologies, head to my website, aawarne.com. And there's a for authors link, and that will show you all the different anthologies that we're coming out.
Sweet. And Jay?
Cool. Right, you can find me on Facebook at JT Moriarty Writer. I've got a little thing here, so that's how it's written. Is that showing up?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, but mostly on Facebook these days. And then can I show you something? I've got some books here.
Yes, go ahead.
Right, this is The Full Life of a Robot, which was the first one I wrote. It's thinnish, only about 33,000 words, and I just finished the second one, A Machine of Blood, which you will notice is a lot fatter than its first one, which is just fantastic.
So number 3 is going to be like a volume?
Is it?
Number three, I'll tell you, Maddie, I'll actually send you the front cover of it. It's called Stainless Steel Souls,
Yes.
The Full Life of a Robot 3.
Yes.
So there you go.
So
An
you
exclusive
started on
front
it?
cover spoiler. I have. And your question about what happens at the end of this one, I'm not telling. But it'll look like this.
Oh, killing me. I can't wait. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for interviewing us.
Yes, it was a pleasure to chat with you guys.
Thank you.
Nervous, fun.